I'm Michael Epstein. I'm the director of a multimedia design company called Walking Cinema. We're based in San Francisco, and we specialize in audio and augmented reality walking tours that give people, similar to what you're working on, an immersive experience of the past, but mostly using three-dimensional augmented reality as part of a walking story that we tell. Well, first of all, you want to introduce yourself, like who you are and where you work, and tell us a little bit about the museum in general?
I'm Zsuzsanna Nagynévhatári. I'm working in the Hungarian Open Air Museum in Szentendre, which is not so far from Budapest, the capital. It's the Central Open Air Museum of Hungary, which means that the institution aims to represent all rural architectural regions of Hungary and show way of life together with intangible cultural heritage set in the interiors as so-called scenes. So it's a very complex representation we aim at here in the museum, and we do very thorough research work to be able to realize this in the museum. The Open Air Museum is in the territory of the Duna-Ipoly National Park, and it's a very beautiful surrounding. And we have exhibition units scattered around 75 hectares. These exhibition units are little museum villages because they represent a given region as a settlement. And the settlement pattern we arrange the houses in is characteristic of the given region. And thus visitors can discover rural architecture and heritage by walking around the museum and seeing all the interiors we show them. The Transylvania Building Complex is the latest exhibition unit of the Hungarian Open Air Museum. It was opened in May 2022, won a gold prize by the Evicom in creative and interpretive exhibition installation category. We worked together with Xor multimedia company, and the exhibition designer was Haon Lab Ltd.
Wow. It sounds challenging in that, regions and different time periods and cultures change and evolve over time. Is that one of the challenges you face in the museum, is like picking a particular moment in time to represent?
Yes. It's a very complex and I think very exciting professional task to realize. The institution itself was founded in the 1960s, in 1967. So it has a concept which is dated from the 60s. But the museum has been changing a lot, has been transformed in the latest decades very much.
And so tell us specifically about the exhibit. It sounds like you said you reconstructed not just one village, but a couple of villages. Yeah, tell us about that. And what was innovative about it too?
In this Transylvanian Building Complex, we have two parts. We have a small town, which is methodologically a very unique representation here in Hungary, because we don't have towns in open air museums. We have 5 regional open air museums in the country, but we mainly have rural areas. So making a town and reconstructing a town was a very, very good challenge for us professionally. And it was a very exciting professional job to do. And besides this small town, we have a village of buildings, but all of the buildings belong to different micro-regions or macro-regions. So they make up a whole in their totality. In this small town, we have a main square, and the village is next to it, besides it, and it also have a square with a church, a school, a community hall, and several other buildings. and making several phases of the construction work and the exhibition design and planning and realization means that we will complement these village and town with more buildings in the future.
So it's really what I would use is a composite. It's a composite village. And from what I understand, a lot of the experience is driven by specific people and characters you meet. Tell me about that.
When we plan an exhibition, we drew up a concept, which means that we have a professional view of what to represent, so as we can be as authentic as possible. And we have to do the research for this to realize. Then we choose the buildings. We select the buildings in the villages and in the towns. And we go in the towns with the ethnographer or the historian goes together with the architect, and they search for the appropriate building which can represent those regions. When we find the building, we make an architectural survey of the building, and if it's possible, we relocate the building into the museum. And then we do ethnographic research, very thorough ethnographic research of the community to which the building belongs, the family. We do a very thorough family research, and we also do a house research because the house has its own life and changes during this lifetime. And then we appoint a point in time which we would like to represent in the museum. And then we collect objects so that we can make the exhibition, the interiors, and we collect those objects which fit this exhibition time we planned.
Wow! So I thought they were replicas, but they're actually the original buildings that have been disassembled and then reassembled on your site?
Yes, it's like Lego. Yeah, it's like Lego. Some of the cases we use copies or reconstructions because some of the buildings are locally protected, or we reconstruct a time period which cannot be researched in the building. And in these cases, we do a copy or a reconstruction with the help of archival sources, photos and postcards of all times.
So going back to that idea of an emotional connection, I guess both to like the place, the culture, but then if this is a particular house from a particular family, how do you create that emotional connection between the audience and that family that's being represented?
The emotional connection can be made on several levels. People can be attached to the region, can be attached to the village, or would like to get to know more about these regions. But we also show them how people lived. And this is a very, very simple concept of relating to each other, because these people we show and their life can be considered in relation with our lives. And we try to enhance this feeling by making different scenes in the interior. We call them situations, which means that we try to establish a moment of time, for example, tradition from the calendar year, or from the person's own life, or a moment of a working process, or a historic or social trauma mirrored in the object and material surroundings. And if we have an added topic in the interior we can talk about, then it can mean another level of connection with people. Because if we show a wedding dinner in an interior, then everyone can relate to the wedding. because of their own experiences. And we can talk about a lot more than showing a very sterile interior.
Well, one of the experiences I had that relates to this is the Lower East Side Tenement Museum in New York. Are you familiar with that museum?
Unfortunately not.
It's basically a museum of apartments. They buy buildings in the Lower East Side of Manhattan where there were many waves of immigration, and they buy the buildings where people lived and basically do research on a family that lived there in, say, the 1920s or 1930s, and then either get objects from the family or find objects that represent what was in there. And they interview the families that live there or the ancestors, and talk and sort of, it's the way the interpretation is done is you have a guide who leads you in. They explain some of the objects. They tell the story of the family, but then they might also have like music they listen to or pieces of an interview with one of those people. And I found that like hearing the voices was incredibly powerful. And I'm curious if you had similar experience with some recordings or technology that makes visitors feel closer to the people who lived in these buildings.
It's very important to make visitors understand what we are talking about, because we are talking about information on several levels. We are talking about historic, ethnographic information. We are talking about architecture and structures. We are talking about economic units like a family and living on a yard and making their living, earning their living from an occupation. We are talking about communities, and we are talking about individual lives. We are talking about object stories. If we also have a situation embedded in the interior, we are talking about even a lot more.
Right.
And our experience was that visitors cannot relate to faraway times, and we have to interpret what we are talking about. Mm-hmm. And we started to use different methods for interpretation in the open air context, which is the novelty, I think, of the exhibitions in the Hungarian Open Air Museum, because we started to organize indoor exhibitions. For example, you can pick a topic and elaborate on the topic in more detail if you have an indoor exhibition space. We can also do living history. We use living history in the Transylvanian building complex too. We have different characters in the different buildings. And while it's mostly the pre-20th century, the buildings represent in their appearance and in their interior, these characters and figures can meet on the square, can interact with each other, and they can tell stories, they can act out dialogues. This is the first-person singular interpretation, live interpretation. We also have active venues where visitors can try different things, because hands-on experience is very important for visitors to gain a feeling of objects and past smells, and so that they can have memories triggered by these experiences. So interactivity and hands-on possibilities are also very important. And besides that, we also use different presentation techniques from indoor exhibitions, but we set them into the interior. For example, we add an audio material which can be listened to. Mm-hmm. For example, in one of the houses, we have a digital gramophone which can be used by the visitors. they can engage in retrieving information in this way. They can put on the disc. They can put the disc on the digitally prepared gramophone and listen to the music. We can also add multimedia to some of the interiors. But and we have also done this in the Transylvania Building Complex with the help of exhibition designer and multimedia designer team from the very beginning, which is very important because they are not later additions to the interiors, but they are organically developed together with the exhibition idea and also with the museum education ideas as well. So it has been, or it was a very long planning process so that we can have this media mix in the exhibitions, a kind of fusion of indoor and outdoor exhibition methodology. And it was a very, very exciting and challenging task for us to do.
So were there any surprises along the way for you personally? Like, I don't know, something, a certain story or a certain place that you thought you understood and then you got new information that changed the way you presented it? Or I don't know, something about the design, you thought you designed it a certain way and then you realized something and made a change in the middle?
Yeah. I think one of the greatest challenges is to make a balance, because people come to an open air museum for a kind of time travel. Right. We are a three-dimensional reconstruction of a long lost past, or not so long lost, as we have already talked about that. But they really like this nostalgic feeling of going back to the past, and some of the cases recognizing objects from their own past, and we have to balance the new interpretation methods so that they can find what they have come for, but they can also be engaged more in the content the curators have worked out. Because, for example, in the post office, we have a telephone center, kind of telephone center, where the visitors can make the connection between the lines. And if they make the connection, they can listen to a story, a news item from the past. And it makes them understand how the telephone center works, but they also got to know more stories. Or there is a Morse code decoder in the post office where they can work together to decode the Morse with the help of the telegraph. So we can show how something works, and we can also add information, and they can be more actively participants in the process.
Got it. So the balance is sort of between allowing people to feel like they've just gone into the past and they're literally in a natural environment from years ago, versus sort of altering that environment with activities that they can do, or even digital information that helps them understand more about that environment. That's the balance.
And the balance which has to be shown in the exhibition design. And this was what you asked about. It was a very good discovery for me that our exhibition designer team understood what we wanted. And exhibition designs are very good, but they very much harmonize with the exhibition space, which in most of the cases is an interior. And I think it's a very big challenge for designers too, because we have different spaces. We have closed or small rooms in some of the cases. In some of the cases, there's not much natural light. Temperature cannot be controlled in a way that be controlled in an indoor exhibition space. We can also mention humidity, which means an extra challenge on the side of multimedia to use. but we wanted to make our interpretation methods more wide in techniques, because people are very keen on using some multimedia in some of the places, and we could add a lot of content in a very powerful way, because they are not just information like on a website when you read a lot, or in a book or in a library when you read a lot of information, but we make this information much more reachable for them with the help of multimedia, because we use data visualization. For example, when we talked about ethnic proportions in Transylvania, which is a very central topic for people to understand how many people were living of what kind of nationalities in different time periods, showing the transformation, because we also have to reflect on change in the latest decades. But we also use light installation, which is also a powerful tool to mediate a message of an exhibition. So it's not always about content. It's a very complex way of showing what we would like to mediate about the exhibition.
Got it. Right. It's not just content, because sometimes people want to just experience the place, and sometimes you want to find a way to present the information in a way that feels natural and doesn't interrupt their ability to just be there.
Yes, and
the past.
Yes.
Yes.
Sometimes we found that a flip dot display, or a light in the church, a light installation at the church, or light installation in the Freemasons temple is very informative, and provides an experience for them, which helps them also understand the content of the exhibition.
That's great. Well, I think we're at time. I really appreciate you doing this.